Welcome, dear listener, to the Sleeping Hourglass. Tonight's story carries us back to a gentler beginning before the world learned to speak in notifications and glowing screens. We'll drift into an age of patience when messages crossed oceans slowly and silence was not empty, but full of waiting. It's a journey into how connection was dreamed, not rushed, how a second world began forming softly, almost without notice. If this peaceful corner brings you comfort, you're welcome to like or subscribe. A quiet way of keeping the hourglass turning. The world breathes more slowly now, not because people are calmer or wiser or less curious, but because distance still has weight. Time still insists on being felt. To send a thought from one place to another requires patience, planning, and surrender to waiting. Words must travel by hand, by horse, by ship, by wire that hums only with voice and stops at the edge of its reach. Morning light falls into rooms where desks are carved from wood and scarred by years of elbows leaning into thought. Ink stains fingers. Paper waits. A letter begins its long journey the moment the pen lifts, and from that instant forward, the sender can do nothing but trust weather, trust roads, trust strangers who will never read the words but will carry them anyway. Weeks pass. Somewhere else, another pair of hands opens the envelope. The moment arrives late, but it arrives intact, carrying a version of the past. This is how connection works now, delayed, fragile, beautiful in its slowness. Voices, too, are bound by walls. They echo in rooms, spill into streets, fade into air. A conversation leaves only where bodies gather. When it ends, it dissolves. Memory must do the rest. To hear someone far away is a miracle reserved for wires stretched taut across land, carrying sound but not presence. Even then, the voice arrives thin, distorted, a ghost of the speaker rather than the whole. Knowledge leaves in places, not everywhere. It rests in libraries where dust floats gently through shafts of light. Shelves stand like quiet sentinels, guarding centuries of thought. To learn is to travel, sometimes across cities, sometimes across continents. The mind must follow the body. Curiosity is strong, but geography is stronger. Students lean over tables, copying passages by hand. Scholars argue in person, debates unfolding over years instead of minutes. Discovery moves forward slowly, not because ideas are rare, but because sharing them takes time. The world knows many things, but no one knows them all at once. There is a certain peace in this limitation. The day ends when the sun sets. News arrives when it arrives. Silence fills the spaces between updates, and in that silence, people think. They wait. They imagine. Loneliness exists, yes, but it is familiar, shaped like distance rather than absence. When someone is far away, they are truly far. When they return, presence feels earned. And yet, beneath this calm surface, something restless stirs. Human beings have always wanted to reach beyond their immediate circle, to know what is happening elsewhere, to share not only words, but understanding, to shorten the space between question and answer. Around tables and fireplaces, people speak of inventions, of faster ways to send messages, of machines that might one day think alongside them. The telegraph clicks its way into existence, turning language into pulses. It is a marvel, but it speaks only in code. The telephone follows, bending sound through metal, shrinking distance, but not dissolving it. Each innovation stretches the world a little thinner, but none of them tear the veil completely. Between these inventions, life continues much as it always has. Scientists work in isolation. unaware that someone across the ocean is solving the same problem. Artists create without knowing who might one day see their work. Governments make decisions based on information that is already aging as it arrives. The world moves forward, but not together. Time remains uneven. Some places feel modern, others feel ancient. Progress arrives like a tide that touches shores at different hours. A discovery made in one city might take years to influence another. Knowledge does not flow, it migrates. And still, the ache grows. It is not loud, it does not yet have a name. It lives in the spaces between letters, in the delays between question and reply. It is the feeling that ideas should move more freely than bodies, that minds should not be trapped behind borders of paper and distance. That somewhere, somehow, there must be a way for thought itself to travel. In universities and research centers, machines begin to appear. Large, humming, room-filling devices that calculate faster than any human hand. They are rare, expensive, and solitary. Each one stands alone, an island of computation. To use one is to schedule time, to submit requests, to wait again. But when people sit near these machines, listening to their steady rhythm, they begin to wonder, what if these machines could speak to one another? What if knowledge did not have to be rewritten each time it moved? What if distance could be reduced not by speed alone, but by connection? These are not yet plans. They are whispers. Half-formed thoughts, scribbled in margins, spoken quietly over coffee. The technology is not ready, and neither is the world. But the longing is patient. It has waited centuries already. Outside, the world still runs on clocks and calendars. Trains depart on schedules. Ships vanish beyond horizons. Messages continue their slow pilgrimage across land and sea. People fall asleep not knowing what has happened elsewhere that day and wake without expecting answers. There is beauty in this not knowing. But there is also friction. Every delay reminds humanity of its limits. Every unanswered question highlights the cost of separation. And so, without fanfare, without urgency, the silence begins to feel less like peace and more like a problem waiting to be solved. The world does not yet know it is standing at the edge of a threshold. It only knows that waiting has become familiar, and that familiarity is starting to wear thin. Somewhere ahead, wires will learn to carry more than sound. Machines will learn to share. Distance will begin to fold inward. But for now, the world rests here, breathing slowly, unaware that its quiet patience is the soil from which a new kind of connection will grow. The air grows tighter, not everywhere at once, but steadily, as if the planet itself is holding its breath. After the great wars have ended, peace arrives wearing a fragile mask. Cities rebuild, families return to routines. But beneath the calm surface, a new kind of fear settles in. Quieter than marching armies, heavier than sirens, the world is divided now. Invisible lines cut across maps, across ideologies, across ways of thinking. Two vast powers face one another across oceans and continents, each armed not only with weapons, but with suspicion. The Cold War begins not with fire, but with silence sharpened into threat. Information becomes precious. Governments speak in codes. Messages are guarded, encrypted, delayed. Decisions depend on knowledge that must travel faster than before, yet remain secure. A command lost to distance or destruction could mean catastrophe. In this new age, speed is no longer a convenience. It is survival. In underground rooms lit by fluorescent glow, men and women watch blinking panels and spinning reels. Maps hang on walls, marked with potential targets and possible losses. Phones ring with urgency. Wires stretch outward like nerves, carrying instructions that must arrive intact, no matter what happens in between. The fear is not abstract, it is imagined in detail. A missile launched, a city gone silent, communication lines severed by a single strike. The question echoes through military planning rooms and research laboratories alike. What happens if the center cannot speak to the edges? What happens if the voice of command disappears? For centuries, power has relied on hierarchy. A single point issuing orders, many points obeying. But hierarchy has a weakness. Break the top, and everything below collapses. In an age of nuclear threat, that weakness feels unbearable. So the thinking begins to change, not loudly, not all at once, but slowly, as fear forces imagination into new shapes. Instead of asking how to protect one command center, planners begin to ask how to remove the need for one at all. How can information move if parts of the system are destroyed? How can messages find their way through chaos? The idea is radical in its simplicity. What if communication does not travel in a straight line? What if it does not depend on a single path? What if messages could move like water, flowing around damage, finding new routes when old ones fail? These questions drift from military necessity into academic curiosity. Researchers begin to sketch networks that look less like ladders and more like webs. No single center, many nodes, each connected to several others. If one falls silent, the rest continue. Resilience becomes the goal. In laboratories funded by defense budgets but staffed by thinkers, not soldiers, computers hum steadily. They are still large, still rare, still isolated. But now they are being imagined as participants in something larger. A system where information is broken into pieces, sent separately, and reassembled at its destination. A system that does not panic when a line goes dark. This is not about convenience. It is about ensuring that a message survives even when certainty does not. Fear presses heavily on every design choice. The imagined future is one of disruption, of broken infrastructure, of partial survival, and so the networks being conceived are shaped by anxiety, but also by hope. The hope that cooperation between machines can outlast destruction. Ironically, the work requires collaboration. Scientists share ideas across institutions, across disciplines, sometimes even across borders. Fear forces openness among those who might otherwise compete. Knowledge moves quietly, passed in conferences, in papers, in conversations held over chalkboards and coffee cups. There is tension here. The purpose is defense, but the method is trust. To build a system that survives fragmentation, people must first share freely. The Cold War sharpens divisions, yet it also creates spaces where cooperation becomes necessary. Survival, it turns out, is a collective problem. Outside the labs, the world continues its anxious routines. Children practice drills in classrooms. Radios murmur with updates. Newspapers speak of standoffs and speeches and shadows. The future feels uncertain, suspended between restraint and disaster. People live ordinary lives under extraordinary threat, often without speaking its name. Inside the research rooms, the threat is spoken of constantly. What if a city disappears? What if cables are cut? What if only fragments remain? Each question pushes the design further from centralization, closer to adaptability. The network being imagined does not care where a message starts or ends. It cares only that the message finds a way. This is a subtle shift in how humans think about connection. Communication is no longer just about sending information quickly. It is about ensuring that information survives, that knowledge persists even when structures fail. That meaning can move through uncertainty without breaking. The irony lingers softly in the background. A system born from fear begins to value flexibility, redundancy, and cooperation. It resists control by design. It assumes failure as a natural state. It does not trust permanence. In planning for the worst, humanity stumbles towards something quietly profound. The idea that connection should not depend on strength alone. The idea that no single voice should dominate the flow. The idea that networks, like communities, are strongest when many support many. At this stage, the work remains mostly unseen. No one outside these circles speaks of networks with wonder. There are no screens glowing in living rooms, no instant messages crossing oceans. There is only preparation, careful and sober, shaped by the weight of possible endings. Yet something gentle begins to form inside the tension, a belief that information wants to move, that ideas want paths, that even in fear, humans reach for connection rather than isolation. The Cold War does not know it is planting the roots of a future that will outgrow it. Fear believes it is building walls. Instead, it is sketching bridges, fragile, experimental, but real. The world remains divided. But beneath the divisions, a new way of thinking about communication takes shape, one that does not demand certainty, only persistence. One that assumes disruption and answers it with cooperation. And in the quiet hum of machines designed for survival, the first outlines of a networked future begin to glow. The fear does not disappear, but it loosens its grip. Inside research offices and university halls, the mood subtly changes. The work continues to be funded by anxiety, shaped by caution, but the questions begin to drift beyond survival. Once the idea of resilient communication takes root, curiosity follows close behind. What else might be possible? Computers still fill rooms. They still hum with restrained power, their lights blinking in quiet sequences. They are expensive, rare, and treated with a kind of reverence. Most people see them as tools, calculators, number crunchers, obedient machines that follow instructions without curiosity or memory. But a few minds see something else. They sit near these machines and listen not just to what they do, but to what they might become. They imagine computers not as isolated boxes, but as participants in thought. Not silent servants, but collaborators. They wonder what would happen if machines could share not just data, but ideas. One of these thinkers is Joseph Carl Robert Licklider. He prefers conversation to command, imagination to hierarchy. He watches how people work, how scientists think aloud, how ideas evolve through dialogue rather than instruction. And he begins to ask a gentle but radical question. What if computers could join that conversation? Licklider does not see machines as replacements for the human mind. He sees them as partners, amplifiers, bridges between thoughts too large for one person to hold alone. In his writings, he speaks of man-computer symbiosis, a phrase that feels organic, almost tender, two forms of intelligence growing alongside one another. For this to happen, computers must stop being lonely. They must be able to communicate, to share programs, data, insights, to allow a person at one machine to interact with information held by another, far away. Distance, once again, stands in the way, but now it feels less intimidating, less absolute. Licklider imagines a future that sounds almost playful. He calls it the Intergalactic Computer Network. The name is whimsical, light-hearted, deliberately grand. It suggests not just a technical system, but a shared mental space, a universe of connected thought. At a time when computers struggle to speak even to their neighbors, he imagines them speaking across continents, perhaps someday across worlds. It is not a plan, it is a vision. And like most visions, it arrives before its time. The technology is clumsy, storage is limited, interfaces are unfriendly. Most machines still require specialized knowledge to operate. The idea of widespread, interactive computing feels distant, almost indulgent, yet the vision lingers, circulating quietly through memos, lectures, and late-night conversations. Others begin to listen. They do not all agree, but they are intrigued. The concept of a networked mind resonates with a generation of researchers who already share ideas informally. Conferences become crossroads. Papers reference one another like letters exchanged between distant friends. Knowledge begins to feel less owned, more communal. Slowly, the meaning of connection shifts again. It is no longer just about commands surviving disaster. It is about collaboration, about letting ideas travel freely, meeting other ideas, combining, diverging, returning transformed. The network imagined by Licklider is not controlled by fear, but by curiosity. Still, obstacles remain everywhere. Computers are incompatible. Each speaks its own language. Each belongs to its institution, its rules, its schedules. To use one often means waiting, submitting tasks, receiving results hours or days later. Interaction is limited. Conversation feels impossible. But imagination does not require permission. In small offices filled with chalk dust and the smell of warm circuitry, researchers sketch futures that feel almost utopian. They imagine screens that respond instantly, systems that allow people to work together despite distance, libraries not bound by walls, knowledge that flows rather than waits. These ideas drift ahead of implementation like stars seen before dawn. They are discussed, refined, set aside, then rediscovered. They shape how people think even when they cannot yet be built. The dream of a networked mind becomes a quiet undercurrent, guiding decisions about hardware, software, and communication. It also reshapes values. If computers are to be partners, they must be accessible. If networks are to foster collaboration, they must be open. Control begins to feel like a limitation rather than a strength. Hierarchies soften. Experimentation becomes a virtue. This is not universal. Many still see computers as instruments of authority, tools for governments, corporations, and institutions. The tension between control and openness grows unresolved. But the dream persists, carried by those who believe that sharing knowledge multiplies its power rather than diminishes it. Time moves forward unevenly. Funding arrives, then disappears. Projects succeed, then stall. Some ideas are forgotten, others resurface years later, wearing new names. But the central vision remains surprisingly intact, a world where machines help humans think together. Licklider himself moves between roles, influencing research agendas more through encouragement than instruction. He plants ideas and trusts others to tend them. The intergalactic network remains imaginary, but its spirit quietly spreads. The future, for once, does not rush. It waits for circuits to catch up with imagination. It waits for smaller machines, faster connections, better languages. It waits for the courage to trust networks, not just with data, but with meaning. And in that waiting, something important happens. A generation of thinkers grows accustomed to dreaming beyond immediate constraints. They learn to design not just for what exists, but for what feels necessary. They imagine a world where distance dissolves not through conquest, but through connection. The dream of a networked mind settles into the collective imagination, neither urgent nor forgotten. It rests there, patient, luminous, unfinished. Soon, hands will begin to build what minds have only sketched. The dream begins to leave paper. It does not arrive all at once, and it does not arrive confidently. It arrives hesitantly, in carefully funded steps, inside rooms that smell of warm metal and dust. The rooms are not grand. They are practical, cluttered, humming with effort rather than certainty. And yet, something unprecedented is about to happen inside them. Machines stand tall and heavy, cabinets of circuitry blinking with restrained light. Cables coil like roots across the floor, fans wear steadily, a mechanical breathing that fills the silence. These computers are not elegant. They are loud, temperamental, and demanding. But for the first time, they are not meant to stand alone. ARPANET is being born. The name sounds clinical, bureaucratic, an acronym shaped by funding and necessity, yet behind it lies a quiet boldness. This is not a single machine, not a single location, not a command center issuing orders outward. It is an attempt at connection itself, a fragile web meant to link distant computers into something resembling a shared space. The idea has waited years for this moment. The visionaries have spoken. The planners have argued. The engineers have drawn diagrams, erased them, and drawn them again. Now, the time has come to test whether imagination can survive contact with reality. The first nodes are chosen carefully. Universities and research institutions, places already steeped in curiosity and collaboration, become the anchors. UCLA, Stanford, UC Santa Barbara, the University of Utah, each holds a machine that will soon try to speak to another, not through paper or voice, but through data shaped into packets, guided by rules still being refined. This is unfamiliar territory. No one truly knows what will happen when the connection is attempted. There is excitement, yes, but it is cautious, almost subdued. Failure is expected. Problems are anticipated. The mood is not celebratory, it is attentive. On the evening of October 29, 1969, the moment arrives. A small group gathers around a terminal at UCLA. The room glows softly, illuminated by screens and indicator lights. Fingers hover above keys. On the other end of the connection, at Stanford Research Institute, another machine waits, silent but ready. The plan is simple. One computer will attempt to log into the other. Just a word, just a beginning. The letters will travel through the network, through lines, switches, and interfaces, and arrive somewhere else. It is a modest goal, but history often enters quietly. The first letter is typed, L. It travels. Confirmation arrives. The system holds. A breath is taken. The second letter follows. O. It travels too. Then the system falters. The connection crashes. The message stops halfway, stranded between intention and completion. The word login never fully arrives. Only LO makes the journey. 2 letters, incomplete, almost poetic in their brevity. There is no applause. There is laughter, soft, surprised, relieved. Not disappointment, but recognition. Something has happened. The failure is not a collapse. It is a proof. The system did not vanish. It reached. It responded. It stumbled. But it did not fall silent. ARPANET has spoken its first syllable. In that moment, the network does not feel powerful. It feels vulnerable. It depends on careful tuning, constant adjustment, human patience. Engineers work through the night, fixing errors, refining code, coaxing cooperation out of stubborn machines. And slowly, the connections improve. Messages begin to travel more reliably. Computers learn how to break information into pieces, send them separately, and reassemble them on arrival. The logic imagined during years of planning begins to show its quiet strength. When one path fails, another can be found. The network breathes again. Each successful transmission feels small, but together they form something new, a sense of continuity across distance. A file accessed remotely, a program shared, a response received faster than mail could ever allow. The machines are still impersonal. They do not glow with friendliness. They do not invite casual use, but they are no longer isolated. They exist now within a growing context, aware, in their limited way, of other machines beyond their walls. The people around them begin to change too. Engineers speak in terms of we rather than my system. Problems are solved collaboratively across institutions. A bug found in one place becomes a lesson shared everywhere. The network demands cooperation, and in return, it rewards it. ARPANET does not expand quickly. Each new node is considered, negotiated, tested. Growth is deliberate, almost careful to a fault. There is no sense of urgency to conquer the world. The goal is stability, resilience, trust. Yet beneath this careful pace, something profound is unfolding. For the first time, knowledge can move without being rewritten. Ideas can be tested remotely. Collaboration no longer requires proximity. The mind, long constrained by geography, begins to feel lighter. Still, few people notice. Outside these rooms, life continues unchanged. Newspapers do not announce the moment. Families eat dinner. Radios play music. The world does not pause to acknowledge the birth of a network. That is fitting. ARPANET is not built for spectacle. It is built for continuity. It exists quietly, growing stronger with each connection, each failure overcome. Its early success is not perfection, but persistence. The system is imperfect by design. It assumes breakdowns will happen. It expects disruption. It prepares for loss. And in doing so, it mirrors something deeply human, the ability to adapt rather than endure unchanged. Late at night, when the rooms are empty, the machines continue their low hum. Data flows invisibly through lines stretched across land. Bits of information travel farther than their creators ever have. The dream imagined by thinkers like Licklider begins to feel less abstract. The intergalactic network no longer sounds like a joke. It sounds premature, yes, but not impossible. The distance between vision and reality narrows, not through leaps, but through steps. ARPANET does not yet know what it will become. It does not know about screens in homes, or voices traveling without wires, or knowledge spilling freely across the globe. It knows only how to try again after failing, how to find another path, how to keep going. In its earliest breaths, the network learns its most important lesson. Connection is not fragile because it fails. It is fragile because it must be tended. And so, with patience and quiet determination, ARPANET continues to breathe. The network is alive now, but it is not yet fluent. ARPANET breathes, stretches, grows, and with each new connection, a quiet problem reveals itself. The machines can reach one another, yes. They can send signals, yes. But understanding remains uncertain. Each computer speaks in its own dialect, shaped by its maker, its purpose, its architecture. Messages arrive, but meaning sometimes slips away. It is like a room filled with voices speaking at once, each sincere, each unintelligible to the other. In the early days, every connection feels fragile. One machine expects information in a form another cannot provide. One sends too much, another too little. Errors multiply not because the idea is wrong, but because the language is unfinished. So the work turns inward. If networks are to grow, they must learn to agree. Not on purpose, not on politics, but on rules, simple rules, patient rules. Rules that say, this is how we speak, this is how we listen, this is how we know a message has arrived whole. Protocols begin to emerge. They are not dramatic inventions. They do not glow or hum. They are documents, conversations, experiments. They are decisions about order, about sequence, about trust. A protocol is a promise that if one machine follows these steps, another will understand. At first, there are many such promises. Different groups write different rules. Some work well in small circles. Others collapse under scale. The network grows more complex, and with that complexity comes a deeper need for consistency. A shared language is no longer optional. It is essential. Into this quiet necessity step thinkers who understand both machines and metaphors. They speak of packets, small bundles of information, each labeled, each independent. A message no longer travels as a single fragile thread, but as many pieces, each capable of finding its own way. If some are delayed, others continue. If one path fails, another opens. This approach feels almost philosophical. It accepts uncertainty. It assumes disruption. It does not demand perfection. Instead, it builds resilience into the very structure of communication. The message is not precious as a whole. Only its meaning is. The transmission control protocol takes shape first. TCP learns how to break messages apart and how to reassemble them. It listens for missing pieces. It asks again when something is lost. It waits patiently until the message is complete. It introduces the idea of memory, not human memory, but system awareness. The ability to know what has been sent, what has arrived, what still wanders the network. Then comes the Internet protocol. IP is quieter, more pragmatic. It does not care what the message says. It cares only where it must go. It assigns addresses. It decides routes. It moves packets forward, one hop at a time, without attachment. Together, TCP and IP form a partnership, one concerned with meaning, the other with movement. Grammar and roads. Rules for understanding. Rules for travel. When TCP/IP begins to solidify, something remarkable happens. Machines that were never designed to work together suddenly can. Different systems, different manufacturers, different purposes, all begin to speak in a shared tongue. The network exhales. Invisible order settles beneath the surface. Chaos does not disappear, but it becomes manageable. Errors are no longer fatal. They are expected, corrected, absorbed. Communication becomes less about forcing control and more about guiding flow. This shift changes how people think. Engineers stop building networks that exist only within walls. They begin to imagine networks that can grow without permission, that can connect systems not yet invented. TCP/IP does not insist on knowing the future. It leaves space for it. Adoption is not instant. Some resist. Existing systems feel safer, familiar. Others worry about openness, about loss of control. But the elegance of the protocol speaks quietly for itself. It works, it scales, it adapts. Slowly, steadily, it spreads. As more machines adopt the same language, the network becomes less brittle and more forgiving. New connections no longer require custom negotiation. If you speak the language, you belong. If you follow the rules, you are heard. This is a subtle revolution. There are no speeches, no declarations. Only a growing sense that something fundamental has changed. The network is no longer a collection of fragile experiments. It is becoming an ecosystem. Machines begin to listen. They respond. They remember. They wait. Information flows with less friction. Collaboration becomes easier, less ceremonial. A researcher can access a distant system without rewriting code. A file can travel across institutions without losing its shape. The language does not care who you are. It does not ask why you speak. It only asks that you do so clearly, patiently, according to shared rules. In this way, TCP/IP embodies a quiet ethic, fairness through simplicity, access through agreement. The network grows more confident. Each new connection strengthens the whole, not by adding power, but by adding understanding. The rules hold. The packets flow. The system adapts. Outside the technical circles, few notice. There are still no glowing screens in homes, no sense of wonder in the public imagination. But beneath the surface, a foundation is being laid that will support worlds not yet imagined. A shared language changes everything. It allows strangers to collaborate without meeting. It allows ideas to travel without translation. It allows systems to outlive their creators. And perhaps most importantly, it removes the need for permission. Once the language exists, anyone who learns it can speak. Anyone who speaks can connect. The network no longer belongs to a single institution or purpose. It belongs to the rules themselves. The machines do not know this. They simply follow instructions, pass packets, confirm receipt, but the humans watching them begin to sense the weight of what has been done. Control has been loosened. Possibility has been widened. The grammar of a new world is in place. From here, growth will not require redesign, only participation. New networks will join old ones. New machines will speak the same language without knowing who invented it. The network listens now, patiently, fluently, and in that shared silence between packets, the future gathers itself. The rooms are quiet, but they are not empty. They hum softly with machines the size of wardrobes, lights blinking in patient rhythms. Cables snake across floors like roots seeking water. Coffee cools in forgotten cups. Outside, the world moves on unaware, but inside these rooms, something gentle is unfolding. This is not a culture born of contracts or competition. It grows instead from long conversations, handwritten notes taped to terminals, and late nights where no one is counting hours. The engineers who gather here do not speak of ownership, they speak of possibility. They speak of problems not as obstacles, but as shared puzzles waiting to be solved together. There is no applause when progress is made. Often, no one even notices at first. A line of code works. A connection holds. A message travels farther than it did yesterday. Success arrives quietly, like dawn light slipping through a crack in the blinds. In this world, hierarchy loosens its grip. Titles matter less than insight. The youngest voice in the room may hold the clearest answer, and the most seasoned mind listens just as carefully. Knowledge flows sideways, not downward. It moves the way water prefers to move, toward openness. Email begins to replace the stiff language of official memos. At first, it feels informal, almost improper. Messages are shorter, warmer. Jokes appear. Greetings soften. Conversations stretch across campuses and time zones without asking permission. Someone asks a question into the network, and someone else answers, not because they must, but because they can. The network becomes a place where curiosity feels safe. Mistakes are shared openly, not hidden. This didn't work, someone writes, and instead of blame, replies arrive with suggestions, improvements, encouragement. Failure loses its sharp edges here. It becomes part of the collective learning, absorbed and reused. There is an unspoken agreement forming, fragile but sincere. If you learn something, you pass it on. If you improve something, you share the improvement. Knowledge is not diminished by giving. It seems to grow stronger, more resilient. The more hands it passes through. The idea of intellectual property has not yet arrived with its fences and guards. Code is written to be read. Protocols are published freely. Standards are discussed in open meetings where anyone may speak, and many do. The goal is not to win, but to align, to make sure that distant machines, built by different people in different places, can understand one another. Trust becomes the invisible infrastructure. More important than any cable or protocol, it binds this early internet together. Trust that messages will be answered. Trust that contributions will be acknowledged. Trust that the network exists to serve something larger than any single institution. This culture does not feel revolutionary while it is happening. It feels natural. These are researchers, after all. People trained to build on one another's work, to cite sources, to stand on shared foundations. The internet, in these years, is simply an extension of that academic soul given wires and breath. And yet, something deeper is taking root. For the first time, collaboration is no longer limited by geography. A solution discovered in one lab can echo across continents in moments. The pace is still slow by future standards, but compared to the silence of before, it feels miraculous. Late at night, terminals glow like small moons. Someone sends a message not knowing if anyone will answer before morning. Often, an answer comes anyway, from another city, another country, another mind awake and willing. In these exchanges, the network begins to feel less like a machine and more like a shared space. Community forms almost accidentally. People recognize names. Writing styles become familiar. A sense of presence emerges, faint but real. These are not faces or voices yet, but they are minds, unmistakably human, reaching through the wires. No one speaks of monetization. There are no advertisements, no metrics, no sense that attention is something to be harvested. Time feels abundant. The network grows not because it is profitable, but because it is useful, and because it feels right. The internet, still small enough to imagine as a village, learns its manners here. It learns patience, generosity, and the quiet joy of being understood. It learns that cooperation can move faster than competition, and that shared purpose can outperform command. There are disagreements, of course. Ideas clash. Protocols compete. But even conflict unfolds in the open, documented in mailing lists and meeting notes. The arguments are technical, passionate, sometimes sharp, but they remain grounded in a shared belief that the network itself must remain open. This openness becomes a kind of moral inheritance. Newcomers absorb it without being taught. They see how things are done and follow suit. To contribute is to belong. To hoard is to misunderstand the point entirely. Slowly, quietly, the internet gains a personality. Not loud, not flashy, but thoughtful. It rewards those who listen. It favors clarity over control. It bends toward those willing to explain, to teach, to translate complexity into something others can use. In these years, the internet does not yet know it will one day carry arguments, commerce, and noise. It does not know it will be asked to scale beyond intimacy. For now, it rests inside a smaller dream that humans, given the right tools, will choose cooperation more often than not. The engineers go home when the sun rises. They sleep, they return. The network waits for them, patient and persistent, holding their conversations in memory. Each small improvement remains, layered gently atop the last. This is how the internet learns to be generous. Not through policy, but through practice. Not through enforcement, but through example. 1,000 quiet decisions made without ceremony shape what the network believes itself to be. And as this culture of sharing settles into place, something important becomes possible. The network, once an experiment among a few, begins to feel ready for more minds, more institutions, more distant shores. It has learned how to welcome. Soon, the world will step closer, drawn by this quiet promise of connection without walls. And the internet will stretch, carefully, to meet it. At first, the network still feels like a collection of rooms. Familiar halls, familiar names. A shared rhythm learned through years of quiet cooperation. But something subtle is shifting now, like a building whose doors have been unlocked without ceremony. The internet does not announce its expansion. It simply allows more footsteps to enter. Universities are the first to feel the widening. One campus links to another, then another still. Research centers join in, not as conquerors, but as guests welcomed by shared standards and open protocols. The language has already been agreed upon. The manners are already known. To connect is no longer an experiment, it is an invitation. Each new connection feels like a small act of faith, a cable laid, a satellite aligned, a system configured to trust messages from beyond familiar borders. Somewhere, a switch is flipped, and a new place quietly becomes reachable. No flags are raised, no speeches are made. The network simply grows. Geography begins to loosen its hold. A question typed in one city can be answered in another before the kettle boils. Knowledge that once slept on distant shelves now stirs at the tap of a key. The map of the world does not change, but the experience of distance does. Across oceans, signals begin to travel. They move through undersea cables, through satellites tracing patient arcs above the planet. Water and sky, once barriers, become pathways. The internet learns the shape of the Earth by touching it everywhere at once. Time zones soften. Morning greets night without knocking. Conversations stretch across hours that no longer align. Someone writes before sleep. Someone else replies after waking, and the exchange feels continuous, like a shared breath taken at different moments. For those who join, the experience is both thrilling and disorienting. The network feels vast, yet strangely intimate. You may never meet the person responding to your message, but their words arrive directly, unfiltered by distance or delay. The machine disappears, leaving behind only the sense of another mind paying attention. Institutions begin to recognize what is happening. This is no longer just a tool for specialists. It is becoming a space, a shared environment where collaboration unfolds naturally. Libraries connect, databases open their doors. Information that once required travel, permission, and patience now flows with new ease. Nations, too, begin to step closer, carefully at first, with caution shaped by history and politics. But the technical language of the network speaks more softly than diplomacy. It asks only for compatibility, not allegiance. A node does not care who governs it. It cares only that it can be understood. As countries connect, the internet's accent grows richer. Different writing styles, different priorities, different questions begin to surface. The network listens to them all. It does not correct pronunciation. It does not enforce uniformity. It simply carries what it is given. The world starts to feel smaller, not in size, but in reach. Events in one place ripple outward almost immediately. Discoveries travel faster than rumors ever did. The delay between knowing and sharing shrinks, and with it, the sense of isolation many places have long carried. Human voices, once confined to local rooms, now echo through machines. They appear as text at first, plain, unadorned, powerful in its simplicity. Words arrive without faces or tone, yet meaning still finds a way through. Humor survives. Curiosity thrives. Even misunderstanding becomes a kind of bridge, prompting explanation rather than silence. There is a quiet awe in these early exchanges. People realize, slowly, that they are not merely sending data. They are being heard. Across borders and oceans, someone reads what you have written. Someone responds. The gap between here and there thins to almost nothing. The internet does not erase difference. Instead, it places difference side by side. It allows comparison without travel, dialogue without assembly. For the first time, collaboration on a global scale feels not only possible, but practical. This expansion is not without friction. Connections fail, lines drop, speeds vary wildly. Some places join easily, others struggle against cost, infrastructure, or politics. The network stretches unevenly, like fabric pulled in many directions at once. Still, it stretches. Those who were present in the earlier days feel a mix of pride and unease. The village is becoming a city. Familiar names are harder to recognize. Conversations multiply beyond the ability to follow them all. The intimacy of before begins to thin, even as possibility multiplies. Yet the culture of sharing holds. For now, the norms learned in smaller rooms echo outward. Newcomers absorb them through observation. They see questions answered generously, ideas exchanged openly, and they follow suit. The internet teaches by example, not instruction. The network's growth feels organic, almost biological. Nodes multiply like cells. Connections strengthen through use. Paths form where traffic flows most often. No single mind controls this expansion. It is guided instead by need, curiosity, and the quiet human desire to reach beyond one's immediate surroundings. Across the world, people begin to sense a shift. They may not name it yet, but they feel it. Access to information changes expectations. Waiting feels heavier now that speed is possible. Silence feels louder now that response is within reach. The internet becomes a mirror held up to humanity's restlessness and hope. It reflects ambition, generosity, impatience, and wonder. It carries questions large and small, trivial and profound, without judgment. And still, beneath it all, the machinery hums, servers glow, cables pulse, packets travel faithfully from origin to destination, indifferent to the meaning they carry. The technology remains humble, even as the world pours itself into it. This is the moment when the internet stops being an experiment and becomes a presence. It no longer belongs only to those who built it. It belongs to those who use it, and to those who will, soon enough. The world has stepped inside, quietly, without fanfare. It has brought its languages, its curiosities, its questions. The network receives them all, widening its paths to make room. Something irreversible has begun. Connection, once rare and precious, is becoming expected. Distance, once defining, is becoming negotiable. The internet holds these changes gently, unaware of how heavy they will one day become. For now, it simply listens. And in listening, it prepares for the next transformation, the moment when this vast, invisible network will learn not just to connect institutions and nations, but to present itself, plainly and simply, to every human eye. By now, the internet is vast, but it is still mostly unseen. It lives behind commands, codes, and careful instructions. To reach it, one must already know how. For many, it remains something felt indirectly, powerful, distant, a humming presence behind institutional walls. The network connects the world, yet much of the world cannot quite see it. Inside this complexity, a gentler idea begins to stir. It forms not in a moment of spectacle, but in quiet concentration. At CERN, where particles are traced and time is measured in impossibly small increments. Tim Berners-Lee works among scientists whose greatest challenge is not discovery, but remembering. Information scatters easily here, across computers, formats, offices, and minds. Knowledge exists, but finding it feels like wandering a maze in low light. Berners-Lee notices the strain, not just technical, but human. Brilliant people lose time retracing steps, searching for documents they know must exist somewhere. The internet can move data across oceans, yet within a single institution, understanding still slips through cracks. He imagines something simpler, not a replacement for the internet, but a way to walk through it. A system built not for machines first, but for people. Something that does not demand fluency in commands or protocols. Something that invites rather than instructs. The idea is almost modest. Documents connected by links. Pages that reference one another the way thoughts do. A structure that mirrors how the human mind wanders. Associatively, intuitively, following curiosity rather than hierarchy. A web. The word itself feels right. Not a chain, not a ladder, not a pipeline. A web suggests flexibility, multiple paths. No single center. Strength that comes from connection rather than control. Berners-Lee writes his proposal carefully, aware that it may seem too simple for such a powerful network. He does not promise profit or speed. He promises clarity, ease, a way for knowledge to remain connected without being locked in place. At first, few notice. The internet is already busy expanding, already impressive in its reach. But this idea does not compete for attention. It waits, patient, like a door quietly left open. Then the pieces begin to align. Hypertext, long discussed in theory, finds its home. Uniform resource locators give addresses to information, allowing anything to be found again. Hypertext transfer protocol defines how pages speak to one another. HTML offers a language simple enough to learn, forgiving enough to invite experimentation. None of this feels dramatic while it is happening. There is no thunder, no unveiling. Just lines of code written with care, tested, rewritten. A first browser appears, plain and functional. Text sits on a pale background. Links are underlined, humble, waiting to be clicked. But something changes the moment a link is followed. For the first time, the internet reveals itself spatially. You are not issuing commands anymore. You are moving. One page leads to another. Knowledge unfolds not as a list, but as a landscape. The network becomes navigable, not just usable, but walkable. The screen becomes a window. You do not need to know where information leaves to reach it. You only need curiosity. A question. A willingness to click and see where the path leads. The complexity remains beneath the surface, but it no longer demands attention. The human experience comes forward. This is what makes the idea powerful. It does not shout about its importance. It simply removes friction. It lowers the threshold of participation. Suddenly, the internet is not only for institutions and experts, it is for anyone who can read, wonder, and explore. Knowledge begins to open its doors quietly. Universities place documents online. Researchers share findings. Personal pages appear, simple introductions, lists of interests, fragments of identity offered to the open air. The network gains texture, personality, warmth. The web grows unevenly at first. Broken links, sparse pages, long waits as images load line by line. But even in its imperfections, it feels alive. Each new page is an invitation. Each link is a small act of trust that someone else might want to know what you know. The culture of sharing finds a new expression here, not only through code and protocols, but through presentation. People begin to think about how others will experience what they create. Clarity becomes kindness. Simplicity becomes a form of respect. The internet, once invisible and abstract, now has a face, or rather, many faces. Each page reflects its creator. Each site carries a quiet sense of presence. The network feels less like infrastructure and more like a place. Importantly, the web is given freely. Berners-Lee does not patent it. He does not enclose it. The idea is released into the world, unknown, as open as the culture that nurtured it. Anyone may build upon it. Anyone may link. Anyone may participate. This decision echoes far beyond its moment. It preserves the internet's early soul. The belief that connection should not be gated, that knowledge should move without tolls or permissions. The web spreads because it is allowed to. Soon, browsers improve, images sit beside text, layouts soften, color appears. The experience becomes not only functional, but inviting. People linger. They explore. They begin to imagine what else might be shared this way. The web does not replace older ways of using the internet. Email remains. File transfers continue. But something has shifted. The internet now presents itself as a whole, not a set of separate tools. It feels coherent, approachable. This visibility changes everything. When people can see the internet, they begin to imagine themselves inside it, not just as users, but as contributors. The barrier between consuming and creating thins. A page can be made as easily as it can be read. The network's growth accelerates, but gently. Not through force, but through invitation. The web does not demand participation. It makes participation feel natural, and still, beneath the pages and links, the old machinery hums. Protocols hold steady. Packets move faithfully. The deep structure remains unchanged, but its expression has softened. The internet has learned how to speak to humans in their own rhythm. This is the turning point. The internet is no longer something you access. It is something you enter. The screen no longer feels like a barrier. It feels like an opening, a place where knowledge, curiosity, and presence meet. A space shaped not only by technology, but by the simple human desire to understand and be understood. The web does not yet know how much weight it will carry. Commerce, crowds, noise, speed. These are still ahead. For now, it rests in a moment of balance, where openness and simplicity guide its growth. A web made for humans has taken shape, and once humans can walk freely through a thing, they will bring their whole lives with them. The internet does not arrive in homes with grandeur. It comes softly, threaded through phone lines already worn smooth by years of conversation. It announces itself not with speeches or banners, but with a sound. A rising chorus of clicks, hisses, and tones, mechanical yet hopeful, like a machine clearing its throat before speaking. In living rooms and bedrooms, people pause to listen. The noise is unfamiliar, almost intrusive, but it carries promise. Something is happening on the other end of that wire, something waiting to be reached. When the sound settles into silence, a connection holds, and the room feels subtly altered. Monitors glow where televisions once dominated. Their light is cooler, steadier, less commanding. A person sits closer now, leaning forward instead of back. The posture of attention changes. Hands rest on keyboards. The internet asks for participation. At first, it feels like a novelty, a curiosity to be explored after dinner, late at night, when the house grows quiet. Pages load slowly, line by line, images revealing themselves with patient reluctance. Waiting becomes part of the experience, teaching restraint in a world still accustomed to delay. The internet hums into kitchens and spare rooms, into dormitories and shared apartments. It occupies corners, desks, and folding tables. It adapts itself to ordinary life, asking only for space near an outlet and a phone jack. No remodeling required. No ceremony observed. Families negotiate time. Someone needs the phone line. Someone else needs the connection. The internet teaches compromise before it teaches speed. Schedules form around it. Late nights become common when rates are lower and interruptions fewer. People begin to explore without maps. There is no clear sense yet of what the internet is for. It is not a single thing. It feels more like a collection of doors, some open, some half hidden, all waiting for a knock. Email becomes personal. No longer confined to institutions, it carries greetings between friends, updates between relatives, notes sent simply because someone was thinking of someone else. Distance thins. Messages arrive faster than letters ever could, yet still slow enough to feel considered. Strangers meet through words alone. In forums, bulletin boards, and chat rooms, names appear without faces. Conversations unfold in text, stripped of tone and gesture, demanding care. Misunderstandings happen, but so do moments of unexpected kindness. People learn to listen differently. There is a quiet courage in speaking into the unknown. To send a message without knowing who will answer. To share a thought with people you may never meet. The internet becomes a place where identity feels both fragile and free. Communities form around interests rather than location. A love of music, a shared question, a niche curiosity finds its gathering place. Someone realizes they are not alone in what they care about. This recognition, small and powerful, settles gently into the heart. Fear is present, but it does not dominate. There are warnings, concerns, unknowns. Parents worry. News stories speculate. Yet curiosity keeps pulling people back. The internet feels too full of possibility to ignore. Children learn faster than expected. They adapt to screens as if they have always been there. Clicking feels intuitive. Exploration feels natural. Adults watch with a mix of pride and unease, sensing that something foundational is shifting. The pace of information begins to change. News can be read before the paper arrives. Answers can be searched instead of guessed. Waiting becomes optional, then inconvenient. The world feels more responsive, less fixed. Small rituals emerge. Checking messages in the morning. Visiting favorite pages in the evening. Listening to the dial-up song as a familiar prelude. The internet weaves itself into daily rhythm, not demanding attention, but accepting it when offered. Commerce lingers at the edges, tentative. Most interactions still feel personal, exploratory, human. The internet has not yet learned how to sell loudly. It remains a place of exchange rather than transaction. The screen becomes a meeting place, not a replacement for the world, but an extension of it. Conversations begun online spill into phone calls, letters, friendships. The boundary between digital and physical life softens. There is wonder in this stage, quiet and sincere. People marvel at the simple fact of reaching outward and being met. The internet feels like a shared experiment, unfolding in real time, shaped by everyone who touches it. Silence still exists. Connections drop. Pages fail to load. The internet is not yet constant. It does not follow you everywhere. It waits at home, patient, until you return. This waiting preserves a certain balance. Life still happens offline by default. The internet is something you visit, not something that visits you. Its presence feels intentional rather than intrusive. And yet, something irreversible is underway. Expectations shift. Once connection is known, absence feels sharper. Once access is tasted, restriction feels heavier. The world begins to recalibrate itself around this new possibility. The internet does not shout as it changes life. It whispers, nudges, suggests. It offers an alternative way to spend an evening, to seek an answer, to meet another mind. Slowly, habits bend. Homes carry a faint, new glow at night. Behind curtains, screens flicker softly, holding fragments of the wider world. People sit alone, yet not entirely alone, tethered by invisible lines of communication. The internet has entered everyday life without asking permission. It has made itself useful, interesting, and just familiar enough to stay. It does not replace the world outside the window, but it adds another layer to it. Time feels slightly different now. Moments compress. Delays shorten. The future feels closer, more reachable, even as it remains undefined. The internet hums quietly, content to be part of the furniture for now. This is the moment before acceleration, before abundance overwhelms restraint, before speed outpaces reflection. The internet rests here briefly, balanced between novelty and necessity. It waits, listening to households breathe, learning the cadence of ordinary life. Soon, it will move faster than anyone expects. At first, the change feels like excitement. Pages load a little faster. Connections hold more reliably. New voices arrive each day, curious and eager, pressing gently at the edges of the network. Growth still feels like possibility, like a widening horizon, but speed has a way of accumulating quietly. One improvement invites another. Modems hum less patiently. Waiting shortens. The pauses that once softened experience begin to thin. What used to feel deliberate now feels slow. The internet stretches outward faster than reflection can follow. New sites appear daily, then hourly. Information multiplies, branching endlessly, no longer content to rest. The network, once a place you visited, begins to demand more frequent return. Scale changes the feeling of everything. The village becomes a city. The city becomes something harder to picture. Familiar names blur into crowds. Conversations overlap. The intimacy of early connection gives way to constant motion. Commerce arrives with confident footsteps. It recognizes the flow of attention immediately, sees not only people, but patterns. Bright banners bloom across pages. Promises flash. The internet learns a new language, louder and more insistent than the one it was born speaking. Money moves faster than culture can adapt. Where sharing once guided design, optimization begins to take hold. Pages are shaped not only to inform, but to capture. Time becomes something to win attention, once given freely becomes currency. Clicks are counted, visits measured, eyes tracked. The internet begins to notice when you look away. and to learn how to pull you back. This shift does not happen all at once. It layers gently, almost politely. A suggestion here, a shortcut there. Each addition feels small, reasonable. Together, they begin to change the posture of the network. Speed becomes the default. Messages expect replies. Updates expect reactions. Silence feels heavier than it used to. To be slow now is to risk being unseen. The internet grows louder without raising its voice. It does not shout, it repeats. It refreshes, it scrolls. Motion replaces rest. There is always something else to see, something new awaiting just beyond the edge of the screen. For some, this abundance feels intoxicating. Choice multiplies, access expands. The world seems endlessly available. For others, it feels exhausting, though they cannot yet name why. Stillness becomes harder to find. The quiet corners shrink as popular paths widen. What once felt like wandering now feels like being carried by a current. The internet begins to reflect humanity more clearly. Its patience thins where ours does. Its distractions multiply where ours do. The network does not invent restlessness. It amplifies it, mirrors it, accelerates it. Old habits struggle to survive. Long messages give way to shorter ones. Thoughtful pauses yield to immediacy. The value of being first overtakes the value of being careful. The internet remembers how it once moved, but it cannot slow itself alone. It responds to use, to demand, to desire. As more people arrive, bringing urgency and expectation, the network reshapes itself to meet them. Commerce brightens the landscape. Colors intensify. Layouts sharpen. The aesthetic of calm makes room for the aesthetic of urgency. Every element competes for notice. Some mourn the loss without quite realizing what they miss, the early gentleness. The sense of space, the feeling that one could linger without being watched or urged onward. Others embrace the change fully. Speed feels like progress. Scale feels like success. The internet seems alive in a new way, pulsing, crowded, unstoppable. And yet, beneath the brightness, something grows thin, attention fragments, focus shortens, the ability to sit with one idea, one page, one voice begins to erode. The internet does not force this shift, it enables it. It reflects what people reward. Every click teaches the network what matters now. The dream grows crowded. Paths overlap until it is hard to tell where one ends and another begins. The web, once a place of exploration, begins to feel like a marketplace of motion. Stillness becomes an act of resistance. To pause feels deliberate now. To read slowly feels unusual. The internet moves on whether you do or not. And yet, traces of the old rhythm remain. Quiet pages still exist. Thoughtful voices still speak. But they are easier to miss amid the noise. The internet stands at a threshold. It has become vast beyond early imagining. It carries commerce, culture, conflict, and care all at once. It is no longer just a tool. It is an environment. This environment shapes behavior as much as it reflects it. Speed trains expectation. Scale trains comparison. The internet begins to influence how people think, not just what they know. There is no villain here, only momentum, only human desire multiplied by machines that never tire. The internet continues forward, brighter and faster, leaving behind the soft shadows of its early days. Those who remember the stillness feel its absence like a missing note in familiar music. The question is no longer whether the internet will grow. It is how those inside it will learn to breathe. The night no longer belongs to silence. Once, darkness meant rest, lamps dimmed, streets emptied, minds folded inward, carrying the day like a finished prayer. But now the world hums through every hour, alert and breathing, awake beyond its own endurance. Somewhere, always, a screen glows. Somewhere, always, a message waits to be read. Time zones soften, then blur. Morning dissolves into evening without ceremony. A thought written at midnight in one city lands in the bright afternoon of another. The sun never truly sets anymore. It simply moves elsewhere, pulling attention with it like a tide. The internet holds all hours at once, layered and overlapping, refusing to choose when the day should end. This is not how the builders imagined it, not fully. They dreamed of access, of openness, of minds touching across distance. They did not foresee insomnia becoming a shared condition. They did not predict the way urgency would seep into every moment, whispering that something important might be happening just beyond the edge of sleep. News learns to breathe without pause. Headlines refresh themselves endlessly, like waves rehearsing the same shore. Tragedy arrives before grief has time to gather its shape. Celebration flashes and fades before it can be held. The world is narrated in fragments, each demanding attention, each insisting on immediacy. Nothing waits its turn anymore. The internet remembers everything, but it forgets how to pause. Messages stack atop one another like leaves in a fast-moving river. Emails, posts, alerts, replies, all flowing, all tugging at the same fragile resource, human attention. The mind stretches itself thin, trying to listen everywhere at once. Curiosity, once slow and deliberate, learns to sprint. And yet, within this constant motion, there is intimacy. A stranger shares a sorrow into the void, and someone answers. A voice trembles through text alone, and still it is heard. Across continents, laughter meets laughter, grief meets recognition. Hope finds an echo. The internet carries emotion without filtering it, without asking it to slow down. Joy races beside anger. Beauty drifts beside cruelty. All of it arrives together unseparated, unedited. The wires fill with feeling. Human emotion, once confined to rooms and faces, now spills freely into the network. Love letters travel instantly. Arguments ignite before reflection can intervene. Compassion spreads like warmth, and so does outrage. The internet does not judge what it carries. It only carries more. Nights grow shorter, not because the hours shrink, but because minds refuse to close. Sleep is interrupted by the gentle glow of curiosity, by the quiet anxiety of missing something. Somewhere, someone is speaking. Somewhere, something is happening. The world feels too alive to leave unattended. Even loneliness changes shape here. Alone in a room, a person reaches outward and finds a crowd. Words answer back. Presence is simulated, then slowly becomes real enough to soothe. The internet offers company at all hours, and for many, that company feels essential. Silence begins to feel unfamiliar, even uncomfortable, like a language half forgotten. But constant connection carries a weight. To witness everything is to carry everything. Suffering no longer arrives filtered by distance or time. It appears raw, immediate, demanding response. The heart learns to brace itself, then forgets how to rest. Compassion becomes stretched, frayed by repetition, dulled by scale. The world's pain arrives faster than healing can follow. Anger, too, learns the speed of light. Words sharpen when they travel without faces attached. Misunderstanding multiplies. Nuance thins. The internet amplifies emotion the way wind feeds fire, not because it intends to, but because it cannot slow the spread. A feeling shared becomes a feeling echoed, then magnified, then unrecognizable in its size. Still, people return. They return because there is beauty here. Art blooms in unlikely corners. Knowledge opens itself freely again and again. A question asked at dawn is answered by dusk. A memory long buried finds recognition in another's words. The internet becomes a vast, restless commons, reflecting humanity in all its contradiction. Always awake, always listening. The body struggles to keep pace. Eyes ache, thoughts scatter. Rest feels earned only after exhaustion. The line between day and night dissolves, and with it, the rituals that once framed life. Meals are delayed. Sleep becomes fragmented. Time no longer feels circular, it feels endless. And yet, within this sleeplessness, something tender persists. At 3 in the morning, someone writes honestly for the first time. At 4, someone reads it and feels less alone. The internet holds these moments quietly, without announcement. Beneath the noise, beneath the urgency, there is still a gentle exchange happening. One human reaching for another in the dark. The network never sleeps, but humans still must. This tension defines the age. A tool built for connection begins to ask more than it gives. Presence competes with pace. Reflection competes with reaction. The internet mirrors humanity's deepest longing. To be seen, to be heard, while quietly testing how much seeing and hearing the heart can bear. Always awake does not mean always alive in the same way. Life needs shadows. Thought needs stillness. Meaning needs time to settle. Without pause, even joy grows thin, stretched across too many moments to feel full. The internet offers abundance without boundaries, and humans must learn slowly how to choose where to look. This is not a failure of technology. It is a mirror. The internet reflects humanity's hunger for connection and its difficulty with restraint. It shows how quickly attention can be scattered and how deeply care can still run beneath it all. It holds the best and worst together, refusing to separate them. As the night continues, glowing quietly across the planet, a question hums beneath the noise. Can a world always awake learn how to rest without disconnecting? Can connection deepen without consuming? The answer has not yet settled. It waits, patient and unfinished, inside the next moment of silence. We are no longer looking at the internet from the outside. We stand inside it now, as one stands inside a cathedral long after the builders have gone. The walls rise higher than memory. The echoes travel farther than intention. What was once imagined as a tool has become a place. A space where humanity spends its hours, leaves its marks, and quietly reveals itself. The internet does not feel new anymore. It feels like weather. It surrounds without asking. It moves through lives with the steadiness of something permanent. Children are born into it. Elders learn its language late, like a second alphabet. It shapes days without ceremony, threading itself through work, love, boredom, grief. And yet, it is still something we made, not a god, not a force of nature, a human creation, formed slowly by hands that believed connection was worth the effort. Beneath every layer of code, every glowing interface, there remains a simple impulse, the desire to reach, to speak, to be known beyond the limits of a single body or place. We built it because waiting hurt. Distance felt heavy, silence felt too final. The internet promised a gentler world, one where questions could travel freely, where knowledge would not belong only to those with keys. In its earliest breath, it was shaped by generosity. Sharing was assumed. Access was the point. That memory still lingers, faint but intact. Even now, buried beneath noise and speed, the internet remembers how it was born. It remembers open protocols and unnowned ideas. It remembers communities built on trust rather than profit. It remembers when curiosity mattered more than capture, when contribution mattered more than attention. The network does not forget easily. It carries its origins like a quiet scar, evidence of a gentler intention. But what we built has grown larger than what we imagined. Scale changes things. Speed alters behavior. When connection becomes effortless, care must become intentional. The internet gives without asking how the gift will be used. It places extraordinary power into ordinary moments, the power to influence, to wound, to uplift, to mislead. This is where the question begins to breathe. What does it ask of us now? Not mastery, not perfection. It asks for something quieter, harder to sustain. Wisdom, restraint, a willingness to slow the hand before clicking, to pause the voice before replying. The internet reflects whatever we bring into it. It amplifies what we feed it. It does not correct us, it reveals us. To live inside it is to be seen more clearly than before. Our kindness travels farther. So does our cruelty. Our curiosity multiplies. So does our fear. The internet holds contradiction without flinching. It makes no attempt to resolve us into something simpler. It simply shows us ourselves, scaled beyond the size we once knew. This can feel overwhelming. To stand inside such a mirror is to confront the parts of humanity we hoped were temporary. The impatience, the hunger for validation, the ease with which outrage replaces listening. But it is also to see resilience, generosity, and wonder expressed in countless small acts that rarely make headlines. The internet is not one thing. It is millions of moments, stacked and moving, shaped by choice after choice. And choice still matters here. Despite its vastness, the internet remains responsive to how it is used. Every contribution nudges its tone. Every pause alters its rhythm. Culture forms slowly, even in fast spaces. What feels inevitable is often only familiar. The builders once believed that access would naturally lead to understanding. They were not wrong, but they were incomplete. Access opens doors. It does not teach how to walk through them gently. That learning belongs to those who arrive later. To us, we inherit not just a system, but a responsibility. To remember that behind every message is a nervous system. Behind every post is a person carrying unseen weight. To remember that speed can erase empathy if left unchecked. To remember that silence is not emptiness, but a necessary companion to meaning. The internet does not ask us to abandon it. It asks us to inhabit it differently, to choose depth over constant motion when we can, to let questions breathe instead of demanding instant answers, to allow disagreement without erasure, to protect the quiet spaces where thought can gather its shape. This is not a call backward. There is no return to a world before the network. The wires are woven too deeply now into memory, into infrastructure, into daily survival. The question is not whether we will use the internet, but how consciously we will live within it. The internet waits. It does not rush us, even when it appears to. It will hold whatever we bring. It will grow in the directions we feed. It will carry our voices long after we forget the moment we spoke. This patience is its final lesson. Like any mirror, it does not demand change. It only offers clarity. The rest remains human work, slow, uneven, unfinished. The internet will never become wise on its own. Wisdom must enter through those who use it. We stand at no clear ending. There is no final chapter where the internet resolves into something stable and complete. It is still becoming, still absorbing intention and neglect in equal measure. The story remains open, written daily in gestures too small to feel historical, yet cumulative in their weight. Perhaps that is the quiet truth. The internet was never meant to replace humanity, only to extend it, to stretch the reach of voice and memory, to shorten distance without erasing responsibility. What it becomes next depends not on machines, but on attention. As the network continues to glow softly around the planet, carrying sleep and wakefulness together, it holds the echo of its beginning. That simple hope that knowledge could move freely, and that people, given the chance, might meet one another with care. And so the question rests gently with us, like a final candle burning low. Now that we are fully inside what we built, what kind of presence will we choose to be within it? As the story settles like a candle burning low, remember what has passed through you. The internet, for all its brightness, was born in listening, in patience, trust, and the courage to reach gently across distance. Though decades have passed, that first intention still hums like an echo held inside the dark. Thank you for sharing this hush with me tonight. Your listening completes the circle, making history alive again, just for a moment. Now release the day. Let your breath slow, your thoughts loosen, and rest find you. This has been the Sleeping Hourglass, tucking you in gently.